Welcome back. We're discussing the mixed economic indicators in the American economy and the global economy and whether they are pointing to further collapse or a hearty recovery. I'm joined by Peter Schiff, the president of the brokerage firm Euro-Pacific Capital and one of the few people who predicted the housing crash in the US. He's joining us from Stamford, Connecticut. In New York, we have Daniel Gross, a senior editor at Newsweek magazine, where he writes the Contrary Indicator financial column. We'll get you the poll results from the live station in just a little while here on the show. But let's get a question in here. Daniel, if I could put this to you, it came via Facebook to our Facebook page from Jibo Zima, who says, well, Riz, they say the economy is beginning to breathe normally again, but my pocket's still in the ICU, the intensive care unit. Oxygen, please. If there are signs of recovery, what's it going to take for the average person to feel it, Daniel?
Well, I can speak mostly for the U.S. Part of our problem is that we have a great deal of excess capacity. The percentage of factories that are being used is quite low, and we have high unemployment and a lot of sort of idle hands. And what that means is that employers don't have to pay a lot of wages and they don't have to offer benefits in order to get people to work. So we are in a situation where, fortunately, inflation seems to be contained. So the fact that people's wages aren't rising is not tragic. But we are faced with a few years of a period of relatively slow growth, and even given the magnitude of the fall we suffered, the fact that we've lost close to 7 million jobs in about 2 years, it's going to take a long time for us to get back to where we were. And so it's not comforting to say this, but we're in for a long, hard slog where people are going to have to adjust to sort of a new normal where they're going to have to sort of get by on the same amount or less.
But Peter, there's a question that came from Facebook from Moulay El Mehdi Falul, who wrote in saying, investors are so reluctant to put their money in any kind of investment, which indicates the ongoing financial crisis is not yet over. What do you think will make people change their behavior to indicate signs of recovery?
Well, there is no recovery coming, unfortunately, because of what the government has done. They've made sure that no real recovery will ever take place. But as far as investors are concerned, at some point, a lot of investors will realize that the most dangerous asset is the U.S. dollar. And if they think they're going to ride out this recession or depression by holding dollars, they've got another thing coming. I agree with Dan in a way that wages are not going to be rising very rapidly, but prices, on the other hand, will be, especially things for prices of food and energy. And if people are holding on to cash while prices are running out of control, they might realize they need to do something else, like buy precious metals or buy foreign currencies or invest in stocks, maybe even some U.S. stocks, but I prefer foreign stocks to get out of the U.S. economy and out of the dollar.
Well, let me put another one to you here, Peter, from a regular viewer, Michael Ostrolenko, wrote in from Washington, D.C. Thanks for this, Michael. It says, well, you've answered this one, actually. What role does Mr. Schiff see Federal Reserve policy playing in our current economic crisis? But also, what are his thoughts on replacing our current flat money system in the U.S. with the gold standard?
Well, first of all, the Fed caused our problems, that number one, and they're making them worse. Of course, the actions that they've taken thus far have temporarily eased the pain. Certainly, had the government, had the Fed not come to the rescue and bailed out all these financial institutions, the economic contraction would have been more severe than it has been thus far. But that would have been worth the trade-off, because now what they've set the stage for is a much bigger disaster. You got to go back to the recession we had in 2001 and 2002 when the NASDAQ bubble burst. Had the Fed stayed out of it, had they not slashed interest rates down to 1%, we certainly would have had a more severe recession back then. But you know what? We never would have had a housing bubble. We wouldn't be in this mess right now. What we're going through now is the payback for the stimulus back in 2001, 2002. And we're repeating the mistakes. We don't understand that it's better to let a recession run its course. As bad as it is, as painful as it is, get it out of the way. Because whenever the government acts to temporarily ease the pain, they set up a situation where you have much more pain down the road. And unfortunately, the situation is so bad now that down the road isn't going to be 5 or 6 years like it was last time, but maybe 1 or 2 years.
Okay, Daniel, we had a question here that came in from Facebook from Muhammad Ali in Somalia, who says the developing countries are on the road to recovery, but not the developed countries are on the road to recovery, but not the developing countries. Is that the case from what you look at when you look at the global picture? Do you see the developing world as badly hit as the?
No, I actually think it's sort of the opposite. I think one of the things we saw about this this sort of first global recession that we've had since World War II is that the more interconnected you were, especially financially, with the global financial system, the more trouble you had. You know, Iceland, the entire country, one of the richest in the world, the whole country went bankrupt because it was so tied into the global banking system. The countries of sub-Saharan Africa, which are least tethered to the global financial system, actually had better growth throughout this period. And I think when you look at, you know, which large economies avoided recession, it was India and China. Developing countries, you look at South America, you know, Peru did not have a recession. They are not a country that is really wired into the global trading and financial system. So I think it's actually almost been the opposite. The developed countries fell pretty hard and pretty quickly, and they all fell together because they were sharing a common nervous system, namely this finance and their banks. And those who were least connected and less dependent on the sort of Anglo-Saxon financial model held up a little better.
Well, let's let our viewers know the result of the chat room poll. Go ahead then, Peter.
I was going to say this is a point of actual agreement between Dan and I, but you know, one of the interesting things I think about this financial crisis is that the interrelationship between the creditors and the debtors, at the root of the problem is American borrowing. We have borrowed from, you know, everywhere in the world, and so when we can't pay back our loans, our creditors feel it. But I think what's ultimately going to have to happen is that the world is going to stop lending us money, because we can never pay it back. The more money the world lends us, the less likely we are to pay it back. None of the money is invested productively. We borrow money to expand government. We borrow money to buy things, but now we have no means to pay it back because we're not acquiring a real infrastructure, real capital to be able to repay our debt. So the sooner the world can sever this relationship, could stop lending us money, they won't be vulnerable to this type of decline in the future. And of course, the sooner that happens, you know, we can start rebuilding a viable economy, because the world has basically been the equivalent of drug pushers, an enabler. They've been giving us all this credit that's been enabling us to take on all this unsustainable debt.
I have a Facebook question on that, but I'll just quickly let our viewers know the result of the chat room poll, where we asked where you thought the global financial crisis stood. 3% of the people in the poll said we have fully recovered, while 60% said we're on the path to recovery, and 37% of you said we're on the path to a new crash. This question, Daniel, if I can get it to you from Facebook, from Mehernosh Shroff, came in saying, I think America would crash further if China and the Middle East change over to the euro. Considering some of the things that Peter was saying there, and considering how much debt, US debt, China holds, is that even a prospect?
No, I don't think that that's a prospect in the near term. There have been noises made out of it for, you know, economic reasons and for geopolitical ones. But you know, the Chinese have as much to lose from the dollar going south, almost as much as we do. They have huge reserves. Their economy is still shifting, but not quickly enough to a domestic consumer-based one. So they're still heavily reliant on exports to the United States, and they have to take dollars for those exports. The shape of the global the shape of the global economy is constantly changing, and you know, we had a long period where the U.S. was, you know, a very small percentage of the population and accounted for about 30% of global GDP. And over time, that's going to shrink. We are going to be, in the U.S., a smaller component of global GDP, and we will not be able to buy the output of the world's factories.
Now, Peter, this from Facebook, this Moin Roof on the same subject, Raouf on the same question says, is it time everyone got on board with the euro? Is it it is the currency of the future? What do you think?
I doubt it's the currency of the future. I think we'll go back to gold. I think we'll go back to real money, because I don't think fiat currencies work. I don't think in the long run the euro will work either. But in the short run, I think the euro is much better than the dollar. But to say that the Chinese economy depends on us, it's utter nonsense. To say that they need to export their production to us, no, they don't. I mean, their economy is manufacturing. The fact that they're exporting their production, they can stop anytime they want. They've got 1 billion people that can use those products. They don't have to give them to us.
Right.
The idea that the Chinese need to export to America is just as fallacious as the idea that real estate prices are always going to rise.
All right, Peter?
It is going to happen in the very near future that the Chinese are going to come to their senses. They have
Peter,
nothing to lose and everything to gain by dumping the dollar.
Unfortunately, I've got to stop you there, and thank you and Daniel both for coming in this debate. We've run out of time, but I thank you, gentlemen, for your taking part.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for being with us too. Don't forget you can follow me and get updates on topics we cover here on the show via Twitter. Be sure to tweet us your questions and any feedback so we can include them in the program. On the next show, the people of Gabon in West Africa prepare to vote this weekend for a new president after the death of President Omar Bongo, who was in power for more than 4 decades. Well, now his son's running for the top position, and the opposition candidates are worried that the election will be neither free nor transparent. Let us know your thoughts. Until then, from me and the team, see you next time.